Jesus. Jesus was not what the Jewish leaders were looking for at the time. There's, if you read the writings of that time of the Jewish, there's a lot of different thought. But certainly in that, they were looking for that descendant of David who would rule with a rod of iron and would set them free from the Romans. At that time, this was during the, maybe you've heard of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Tiberius was the Caesar at the time of the birth of Christ, and he was succeeded by his son Tiberius. And the Romans had the extent of the empire was fairly well established at that time, and there was a certain amount of peace, but they ruled very brutally. They used crucifixion to enforce their rule, especially geared towards people who would attempt to revolt, and you would certainly face crucifixion. And the Jews, the Jewish leaders in particular, really particularly bristled that, as well as probably common people too. Even though it wasn't all that bad, as long as you were in subjection to Rome, it was quite bad. But so they were looking for this. We know this for a number of reasons too. Even the Magi, when they had come, when they'd seen the star, it says, and they came, and you remember that with Herod, and they asked, and they wanted to know where they were looking for the one who was born King of the Jews. And Herod understood that this Messiah was to be a king, because he even said, well, let me know. When you find him, let me know. And of course, Herod being a wicked man, we know that he sought the destruction. That is a theme, by the way, of the Bible, of the Scripture. One of the key themes is God said, I'm going to provide a Redeemer. I'm going to provide redemption for you. I'm going to pay that penalty of death that was demanded because of the back to the fall with that Adam had done. God said that he was going to do it, and he was going to do this through, in this story of the progressive understanding of the Messiah, this person who was going to come, born of the woman, that was going to bring about this redemption. Well, the story is much of Satan attempting to stop that seed from being born, and that's a key theme that goes throughout the Old Testament. So they were looking for a very powerful ruler, someone that would come and with power. Let me ask you, when you think of power, what do you think of? Well, generally speaking, we think of the first thing probably, I think, is, and what's common, don't we think about kind of coercive force, strength, that kind of power when we think of power? In fact, there's a very influential philosopher. Anybody here, are you familiar with Nietzsche? Anyone familiar with the philosopher Nietzsche? Okay. Nietzsche, he was born in 1844 of Christian parents. His father was a Lutheran pastor. He was an existentialist, and he wrote, and it was very influential even to this day, and I'll tell you who. He was one of the first to talk about the death of God. Maybe you've heard that. It was on the cover of Time magazine some years ago, the death of God. He talked about the will to power, and in this, he saw the domination of other humans as much as the exercise of control over one's environment as being of essence and important. Nietzsche was highly influenced by the theories of Darwin on evolution. He said, knowledge and strength are greater virtues than humility and submission. Humility and submission should be rejected. If people are weak and submit easily, they deserve to be strongly dominated. You know who was a big fan of Nietzsche in modern times? It wasn't that long ago. Adolf Hitler. Nietzsche's writings were very prevalent in Germany at the time of the Nazis' rise to power. And this is what they saw and understood as power, and it begins to make sense. Nietzsche also spoke about the Superman. So did Adolf Hitler in building the Superman of the Aryan race. So that was power to them, domination. Alvin Toffler. Are you familiar with Alvin Toffler? Okay. Alvin Toffler is an American writer and futurist. Was paid, still alive, I don't think he's retired, but he was paid by companies such as IBM and Xerox to talk about the future and to kind of prophesy the future of technology. And he was also the editor of Fortune magazine for some time, and he argued in a book called Power Shift, one of his trilogy of books, that there's three main kinds of power: violence, wealth, and knowledge. Now, true, we say knowledge is power, right? We're familiar with that. But back again, I ask, when we think of power, isn't it more from, violence or force, and perhaps wealth? Wealth can be a form of power. When you have money, you can do things. You can do things with that can be both good, of course, and coercive. I remember when I was a young Christian, and I was working in a factory, making barbed wire, of all things, and my foreman told us a story. This is down in the valley area where this occurred, and there was a florist. A wealthy man came in and was planning a wedding for his daughter, and they picked out the flower arrangements, and everything was set, and he ordered them. They were provided as agreed upon, very beautiful, no problems whatsoever, and it was a lot of money. It was an expensive flower arrangement. When it came time to pay the bill, this wealthy man, came in with the bill, hands it to the florist, and says, "This is too much. I want you to take this much money off of it. I want you to reduce the cost." And the florist shop owner said, "Well, no, I charge a fair price, and this was the agreed upon price, and no, I'm sorry, you owe this." So the man paid the bill. Then he went and bought the building that the florist rented from and tripled his rent. And my foreman, I still remember the expression on his face saying, "Now that's power." So that's what people think of. I think that's, again, a broad statement here. I understand that there's not everyone's going to say that, but it's kind of the general thought that we have. That's what power is. When we think of power, oftentimes, what do we think too? Superpower. And superpower nations. There's only one superpower nation left for the moment. The United States is still a superpower. So we think about the superpower, United States. What do we think of there? What makes us a superpower? Well, you can go to Toffler and look at what he says: violence, of course, being the negative or coercive side of force, and power, wealth, and knowledge. But certainly, one of the things, wealth, that's gone. So knowledge, yes, still have that. But of course, it's the power. When you think of what makes America still in the world a superpower, if we didn't have our military, would we still be a superpower? You can think about that one. You can answer that one on your own. But it's our power. It's our military. Right now, the American military has 1,477,896, who's counting, active military. About that same amount in military reserve, giving us almost 3 million in the military. Planes, 18,234, including the most sophisticated that's ever been seen on the planet. In fact, it became clear to me as I was looking through this that our strategy is to own the skies and the seas, because other countries have far more tanks and other type of infantry and other weapons, but there's no one close yet at this point as far as owning the air or the seas. Helicopters. Thanks Sikorsky. I don't know if anybody here work at Sikorsky or down in the valley, and of course one of my Sunday school teachers is a senior manager at Sikorsky. 6,417 helicopters, 59 destroyers, 75 submarines.